Hello, my name is Ricardo Terrazas and my partner is Diego Gallegos, and together we are going to tell you about how Charles Darwin made his expedition, what did he found, and what was his theory. So, to begin, we're going to start with who was Charles Darwin? Well, in here, this is a picture of Charles Darwin. Charles Darwin, in a full name, it's Charles Robert Darwin. He was born in February 12, 1809, in a town in England called Shrewsbury, Shropshire. He died in April 19, 1882. He was by profession an English naturalist who wrote the scientific theory or evolution by natural selection. He became the founder of modern evolutionary studies due to his expedition, which he realized in late 1831 in December. So, what scientific expedition did he make? Charles Darwin made one of the highest or most prized expeditions of the entire world. At the age of 22, he sent his expedition aboard the Beagle, which was the name of the ship, which is a picture over here. So, in the Beagle, in December 27, 1831, his first reports after at least 2 years on the sea and on findings on islands. He sent his first reports in August 19, 1832, which was at least 2 years after he first sailed out of his hometown, Weymouth, where he sent a note including plants and animals and as much as he had learned in those 2 years of sailing and exploring. Later on his expedition, he found in Argentina an uncivilized group of people, which he thought they had a great amount of capacity of learning, but he thought that as well as that great capacity of learning would not work for them to get civilized due to some other circumstances. Another 2 years passed, and it was 1834 when Charles Darwin was in an island called Chiloes, where he experienced a massive earthquake, at least 7.5 in the Richter scale, while in a town in Argentina. He got fascinated, as well as his crew, due to that this earthquake lifted the ground and moved all the buildings around him into crumbles. It wasn't until 2 years after that, and almost 6 years after he first sailed out of his hometown, when he got to the Galapagos archipelago, where he found torsties, blue-footed bubbies, and when it was this his main report, which was what made him famous. As well as finding all those blue-footed boobies and finches and giant turtles, after 2 more years in his expedition, he went to Australia. He went as well to Cape Town. As you can see, here is the Galapagos Island. Here is where he experienced the earthquake. So as you can see, Charles Darwin travels all the way to Sydney. From over here, it comes out of Australia. So he basically did a world round trip. He then went to the Cocos Island, which is an island called Cocos because it has a massive variety of coconut trees. So, which was the main observations that he did while on his trip? Well, as I mentioned earlier, in the Galapagos Island, well, this is the ship, the Beagle. In the Galapagos Island, he first found the giant torsty. These torsties have a capacity to live almost 120 to 130 years. The longest lifespan of an animal which has been a giant tortoise was a tortoise called Lonesome George, which was a tortoise which was around 143 years old when he died. Another great discovery he made and reported to back in England was the finches. This is a bird that lives in a massive population in the Galapagos Island and feeds mostly in seeds and nuts. Another discovery he made was the blue-footed bobby. This bird is called blue-footed bobby, so as you can see, the blue foot, and that's what made his name come to life as a real characteristic of the animal. Another discovery he made was the iguanas. These iguanas are native to the Galapagos Island, as they are called marine iguanas. These iguanas have the facility to spend large amounts of time underwater, eat algae, and they have a very short lifespan of around 40 years. So, after all these experiments, there was a scientist called Alfred Wallace, which almost like stole but also modified Charles Darwin's theory. This is a photo of Alfred Wallace. Alfred Wallace was, like Darwin's, a British naturalist, explorer, geographer, and anthropologist. He is most likely known for conceiving the theory of evolution, or making it better so that it is more understandable as a natural selection form. Well, what is the now called evolution theory or Darwinism? Darwinism is more likely known for a term of the ideas Charles Darwin had, but the main term is to explain how natural selection or evolution got formed throughout the passing of the time. So as you can see in this picture, there's first primates, then hominids, and then, like we are now, men. So in this term called Darwinism, it is more to explain what natural selection was. And natural selection, it is known to be, as Charles Darwin defined it first, a way of making the fauna of the nature better, which is when all the dead, all the weak, all the ill, and all the not strength are killed or are eaten by predators. So only the ones that are strong and powerful will survive, and their offspring will most likely have the characteristics of those strong parents. Later on in the video, I'll show you how natural selection works. So, after his trip, Charles Darwin wrote a book, wrote many books, but the most famous book was The Origin of the Species. The Origin of the Species was published in 1859, which was his bestseller for Charles Darwin. This was a book that consisted in all the discoveries and comparings and all he had experienced during his expedition early on in his life. In it, he also described the theory of natural selection and how he believed the animals were changing. As I mentioned, he also wrote another book. The other book he wrote is called Voyage of the Beagle. The Voyage of the Beagle is not most of what he discovered, but it's most of autobiography of what he experienced. Due to that, he published it 3 years after his arrival to his hometown in 1839. What he did in that book was explain what it was to be in the expedition, what he found, what he experienced. So this is what Charles Darwin's life was most likely about. Now, Charles Darwin had much of a postulate. He believed that living forms were not static, but they evolved. Species change continuously. Some will originate and others will extinguish. An example of this as species change continuously. It's the snake with legs. As you can see here, the snake has legs. Now in the modern world, we don't see snakes with legs. Due to that, since they were useless for them and they decided to slide rather than to walk, which made them faster, more accessible to other places. This evolution has been making them not grow with legs anymore. Although, as you can see, there are some exceptions in the genes that make them grow with legs for the snakes. Another example would be the horse, which was hooved. These horses were most likely of the prehistoric era, but what they had was they had like toes in their foot. Nowadays, horses don't have those toes. As you can see, this is a toe of the prehistoric era horse. Now, they only have one hoof, which has making them more accessible, faster, and more able to withstand what nature has given them and to survive against their predators. Now, evolutionary process is gradually slow, and continuous, but without sudden changes, as you can see. One change that would be pretty like was the giraffe. As you can see, this is a short-necked giraffe. Early on, giraffes would have been having trouble eating since they had a very short neck. Well, they couldn't eat the higher leaves, they had to compete with food. But now evolution took them to this, a long-necked giraffe. A giraffe can stand up to 33 feet tall nowadays, which has enabled them with a long up to 5 inches purple tongue, has enabled them to eat high upon the canopy trees, which this has made them survive better, since they don't have any competition for food. Only thing they have to worry about is predators. Other theory Charles Darwin has was that similar organisms are related and come from a common ancestor. All living organisms can be tracked down to a unique origin of life. A great example would be us and the primates. Us, we took this path. Imagine the primates took a path from here to here. So we evolved into humans. The primates, they evolved into more intelligent species, but they didn't evolve as us into thinking men. As I told you earlier, what is natural selection? Natural selection is when the weak get killed so the strong can survive. In this example, it's shown that at the beginning of the population, in the black rock, there's dark mice and tan mice. And after all the predators eat them, there's more population of black mice and less population of tan mice. Which the next generation, as you can see, would be more black mice and less tan mice. Due to that, since the black mice survived, they had the most opportunities of reproducing it themselves and creating a greater population of mice that would survive. Another example would be this one. This is a very clear example, since before the selection you have that. You have many things. You have yellow, red, sort of orange, yellowish, oranges, red, and orange. After all the predators eat the weak and the nature kills the weak, you end up with two, which are red and red. So you ended up killing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, more than half of the population. But after those two reproduce, they will only get the genes, this generation of those two, which in the resistance levels is the stronger ones. So after those two reproduce, they produce a generation of only strong ones. And as you can see, no unresisting species will be able to thrive. Only the high resistance level will have a bigger survival rate than those who don't. Thank you very much. This is September 3rd. We appreciate for you watching, like, subscribe, and thank you very much.